Welcome to Email and Beyond, the podcast bringing you the latest email marketing and other complementary marketing channel tips, tricks, industry chat, brand insights, and more every 2 weeks. Join me, Richard Wall, Marketing Campaign Manager at Spotler, and Kate Barrett, Founder and CEO of eFocus Marketing, as we talk you through the good, the bad, and the ugly of marketing, and how you can create a more intelligent strategy that gets results.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Email and Beyond. I'm Kate Barrett, the founder of eFocus Marketing.
And I'm Richard Wall, Campaign Marketing Manager for SpotlerUK.
Fabulous. And today we're digging into a very specific element of your marketing. We're going to be talking all about call to action buttons, whether they're on your website, sign up forms, in your emails. How do you really make them pop and stand out? When I was on the way to come and record this episode with you, Richard, I was thinking about those core elements of a call to action button. Right. And I kind of broke it down into PCC.
Okay.
Placement, color, copy. Those three elements are going to be critical in driving the best conversion, the best click-through rate from those buttons. Is there anything you'd kind of add to that? So placement, color, copy.
No, I think those are and let's keep it simple and let's optimize these things first. We've talked about psychology, we've talked about testing in a lot of episodes, both in this season and in season 1, which you should definitely go back and watch or listen to depending on your platform of choice. And actually the first episode of this season about the maturity model, we talked about taking steps. So yeah, let's talk about those three core elements. Yeah. And then if more things come to you, leave us a comment, send us a message, drop them in, and we'll explore them further. But yeah, let's start with the three building blocks.
So let's think about it in terms of an email then. So if we think about placement, the first thing that you want to do is when someone opens your email, you want to grab their attention. So quite often, I don't know about you, Richard, but I'll open mine up in the preview pane. Yeah. And just see whether it's on the right-hand side, left-hand side, wherever you want it at the bottom. But effectively, what you're seeing on your email is that top section. Now, that's your real shop window. Your whole email is your shop window, but that is your capture attention, Christmas at Harrods shop window. Yes. Draw the crowds in effectively. So what we need to think about when we look at placement, first of all, is making sure that we've got at least one call to action right up at that top section. So often I see emails that still, even in this day and age, have those call to action buttons right at the bottom after all the content. So what you want to do is make sure you've got that placement in that first section of your email, and then you want to repeat it as you go through your email in bulletproof buttons and text links. So a bulletproof button is where you code your button into your email so that it looks like it's an image. It's a nice color. Maybe you've got some rounded corners on it, but actually it's coded into the message with a colored background, and it might have some images for the corners or what have you. But the actual link is in the code, so that even if images are turned off or disabled or don't load, let's say if you've got a slow internet connection, that's still going to show. Somebody's still going to be able to take action. So the placement of that and how you're putting it into the email in terms of a text link or a bulletproof button, that's absolutely critical. And I think one of the things that comes up whenever I say that and I say you need to be repeating that call to action, well, people are saying, well, hang on a minute. Firstly, I've had clients come back and say, well, won't that increase my spam score having lots of links in it?
Fine.
Not something, unless those links that you're linking to, are on a blacklist or something like that, or if you're using like a URL shortener, don't do those things. Make sure that you're linking to something that's not on a blacklist. Make sure you're not using a URL shortener. But other than that, no, you want to give people an opportunity every time they move down, every time they move to a new section of your content. And this is where you need to think about email design, and maybe we'll do another episode on kind of structure of your emails. But every time you move down, you want them to be able to take that action. Now, the other thing here is if you have, let's say, a newsletter, where you are putting in 5 different blog posts from that month that have gone out for your business, let's say if you're B2B, or if you are B2C and you want to put 10 pairs of shoes in your email, you're probably going, well, Kate, hang on a minute, how do I repeat those 10 calls to action multiple times? Or that's not quite the right way to look at it. What you're thinking about is a theme for your email. So let's take the shoes, for example.
Yeah. Okay.
The theme is shoes. Brilliant. So within that theme, I may have let's call it a mop-up call to action that I put at the top and at the bottom, and then I've got my 10 shoes with individual links in between.
So we're talking about shop the sale now, or shop deals type thing that covers all your bases.
Yes. So you've got your general calls to actions, shoes, then you've got your individual shoes. That's fine because it's all on the same theme. Of course, within that, you can test whether 10 pairs of shoes or 5 would be better for engagement. But you're on the same theme. So if it's, let's say, a B2B newsletter where you've got 5 different blogs, that's okay. Because you're saying, it's look at our content, look at our resources, or that type of thing. So yes, you'll have multiple different links to content or shoes, but you've got that theme. And you have your mop-ups as well. That's really important for placement.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask, because my first thought was if you repeat, say, you want one major call to action, if you're repeating it, is that 2 or is that 1? But if it's the same link you get taken to, that counts as 1 call to action. It's the one journey rather than one button logic.
That's exactly it. Yeah, so you can vary the wording. So I was creating an email for a client yesterday, exactly the same link, but one of them was, yes, I want to find out more information, and one of them was, let me take a look. So it just...
In the same email?
In the same email.
Okay.
Talking about the same things, but I had slightly changed that wording. We're testing it at the moment. But I had slightly changed that wording. So I'm not necessarily repeating the same wording, but I'm following that action that I'm taking them through to that place, whether it's to look at our blogs, whether it's to look at the shoes, whatever it is. So I think placement is critical, because if you've only got one and people have to search for it, that's not very easy. If you've just got text links and you haven't got that kind of visual call out of your call to action button, it can get lost. So you need to be thinking about that placement as people are moving through your content. And we will come back to this in another episode, but effectively, you should have modules of your content. And each module should focus as you move down, kind of like a newspaper article or a blog post or anything like that, where you start with your core critical information, then you have your nice to have, and then you kind of have your backup if you want to go to that level. But you're thinking in terms of building those same elements in your email. So your call to action should follow at each stage. If we think about, so a lot of, we have B2B and B2C clients at eFocus Marketing, but certainly for B2C, you see this a lot more prevalently, that people will put those links in. From your experience on B2B, what do you see people doing with call to action links? Do you see a lot more kind of leaving them till the bottom and thinking, well, we've got to get the message in first and then act? Or what have you seen, or what do you guys do at SpotlerUK?
It's interesting because I was going to pick up on there's 2 sort of things that were kind of tied together there about buttons and text links, because what we've B2B still, like a text layout email outperforms a beautifully designed, what we call HTML
I can see that
version. And one of the things I was going to pick up, and it's slightly bleeding on our next point of color, is do you go for the traditional blue of like a Google URL link? Do you put it in your brand colors? Do you make it stand out? And that's something we test on and off, and it's going to be in the next version of the Great British Split test that we run, really, because it's one of those things that we talk about every so often, and we've never come to a particularly solid conclusion about it so far. So I want to do some proper testing on that.
Yeah, we'll link to that below the episode as well for you.
And if you're on our email list, you'll be part of it anyway, because you'll be getting emails that form part of the test. So keep an eye out for different colors there. And so we get so many more text-based emails, so they tend to be scattered through. And then,
do you know what I find? I'm just going to interrupt you actually, because what I find interesting about that is So in e-commerce, you'd have the text links and the bulletproof buttons. But in B2B, so if I was your consultant, I would say to you, definitely have those text links within the paragraphs and kind of pick out those keywords to have the links on. But I would still have, even if they're text-based links, I would still have specific separate lined calls to action that are denoted. Yeah, and then we'll talk about color and things. But so I would have, a paragraph, and there might be a link within the paragraph in the text, but then I would have
a separate line break,
download the guide now or whatever it is as a separate standout.
That's interesting. I don't think we've ever tried testing that. There we go.
Yeah.
Consultancy.
Free consultancy for you.
So there's that is so. I suppose in that context, in a text-based email, what we'd call a block when you're designing might be, white paper cover, text block, and button.
Yeah.
So within the same space in sort of pixel terms, you might have 2 or 3 paragraphs each with their own call to action. So is the size of the module important, or is it more just a conceptual way of looking at it?
Yeah, great point. I still think that even when it's a text-based email, you've got to have a structure to it. So now, okay, let's make a distinction as well. There's text-based, like pure text-based, where you can't put links behind words. They're just like the whole link is there, versus HTML text-based, where you can put the links behind the words and things like that. But you haven't got loads of images in there. So let's take the latter one, where it's HTML text-based. I think that you have got to have it to pull out those keywords, but it does depend on, it depends on the theme. You've got to have that structure. So I would still have kind of subheadings that are bold, maybe even that slightly bigger font size to denote a heading, break it up. And even if it's that summary CTA at the end, I'd have to have a look directly at the examples. Well, maybe we'll put that out as an example. But
so when we release this episode, when we're promoting it, what we will do is I'll put some polls up on our LinkedIn, maybe on yours as well.
Yeah.
Because what I'm interested in from that little section is when we send an Outlook style, let's call it, so text-based but still built in HTML, because the nomenclature's a bit silly. Do people think that it's coming from an Outlook sender? Do they know that it's kind of built in a Mail Plus style editor, or do they not care? And look, it's a text-based email from an individual, and I'm quite interested in the psychology of what do we sort of consciously know about the email, what do we unconsciously know, and what isn't even entering into the thought process. This is one that we've talked about a few times of our emotional investment in what we do versus our audience emotional investment in it is never going to match. So I'd be interested to find out the result of that poll when we do that. Do you have any? Has this come up for you? Do you have any views on it?
What? I think as marketers, it matters a lot more to us. We think about it a lot more than the end consumer, whether it's a B2B business or B2C. I think what is most critical is simplicity. Ability to follow the content, pick out those key pieces of information, make sure that what you're sending to people is relevant to them. I think that is much more important. And if we keep that in mind as marketers, rather than what platforms it's been sent to. So an example of this is when people move CRM or ESPs, for example. So it used to come up a lot, not so much now, but I still see people asking questions in Facebook groups and things like that. I want to send out an email to my audience to let them know that we've moved platforms. Okay. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, does it contain
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But who cares?
Yeah, it doesn't affect their end experience.
Doesn't affect their end experience. The only thing it might impact is if you have changed your domain and you want to ask them to whitelist it. Which for B2B is probably a little bit more prominent now than B2C, but it's still something that I'm not sure most people know how to whitelist what's coming in, to be honest. And it used to be much bigger than it is now. So I think that is something that really comes into it is understanding the way that we as marketers think about things isn't necessarily how the consumers. In fact, do you know what? It isn't. I've seen so many research polls, like the DMA have some great ones where they've said in the past to consumers, what do you think about this? Or which of these things do you care about? Or what would prompt you most to sign up for emails? And the answers that the consumers give are completely different from what the marketers think are important. So you've got to learn from your audience. And I think when it comes to CTAs, obviously we have a direct metric on this. We have our click-through rates from our call to actions. So, when you're in your platform, hopefully a Spotler platform, and you're in there, you're setting up those campaigns, make sure that you are tagging those individual links so that you can use them for other things going forward. Or when you go back and look at your results and you look at the tracking of those links, which ones? Because again, so we're saying if you have a repeated link throughout your email, and on a lot of platforms tracking, it's going to amalgamate that into one number. So if in the platform you're using, you can break that down and tag it as, top button 1.
Yeah.
Even if it's that, so that you know.
That's how simply I do it. I have event link button, event link image, event link header.
Yeah. And coming on to placement, that's then going to tell you which placement is garnering the most clicks. And again, having looked at thousands of different emails and heat maps and where those clicks are coming from, there's always a couple of things that surprise me and don't surprise me.
Okay.
So one thing is having a visible pre-header text. So the first line of text that appears in your email, having that visible in your email and having your call to action in it, like in the body of the email. So first line of text right up at the top. So rather than having it hidden. So I know in the Spot platform you can do this. In other platforms you can kind of create it as a snippet or a piece that isn't shown in the content.
Is there,
but appears in the inbox. Don't use that.
Put it
into your actual body creative as the very first line.
Okay.
You can put your call to action in there as well. You will be surprised, but you won't, because I've told you about it. How many people will click on that? And actually, I do a lot of training courses around email marketing, and I was training a company once, and they said to me, but Kate, I've spent ages designing my email, building my call to action button. I don't want people to click on the text link at the top. I want them to scroll down.
There we go.
It's a beautiful email.
That's the emotional investment. You're looking for the end result.
Exactly. And I just said, well, what is it that you want? What do you care more about? Somebody looking at your gorgeous email, or the fact that you've done your job so well as a marketer that just from the subject line and coming into the top of your email, they are ready to go.
Right on. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it.
That's what you want. So, think about placement like that. So think about right up at the top in that pre-header. Try not having it hidden. Try having your main call to action. In that first section of your email content, that preview pane window, make sure you've got a call to action. And then as you go down, and what we usually find is you'll either find that the ones at the bottom of the email don't get anywhere near as many clicks as the ones at the top. Or what I've also seen happen a lot of the time is you'll get clicks at the top, they'll kind of die out a little bit in the middle, and then they'll come back at the end, where people have just gone straight to the end and kind of scroll down to get to that point. So placement of your call to actions is a really, really key starting point. Email and Beyond is an eFocus Marketing and Spotler production. eFocus Marketing are a specialist email marketing agency based in the UK and serving customers around the world. We help brands use email more intelligently to engage your audience through our range of consultancy, management, and training services. To find out more about how eFocus can help you supercharge your email marketing, visit e-focusmarketing.com/email and beyond. So now let's talk about the two remaining elements. So we talked about the P, which is the placement, and now we're going to go colour and copy. Now, you mentioned colour earlier, and if we look at anything in marketing, if you just Google it, you'll find like colour psychology wheels and all sorts of things like this. Colour in brand logos, massively, massively important. There's different feelings and things that are conveyed. Even if we think back in history, royalty used to wear purple.
Because it was expensive to produce the dye.
Exactly.
I know this.
Yeah. So it really stood out. So colour has a massive psychological impact on people as well as to how they perceive it, whether it's calming, whether it's exciting, or whatever it is. So we can bring that into our call to action colors as well. The key thing here is you want your call to action to pop. If your call to action doesn't pop, how are they going to find it? And this comes back to what you were saying about, do we use the blue color, like the standard blue link? And if we think about accessibility in emails and in call to action links, having a blue color, underlining your link, putting a little kind of arrow on the end to denote it as a
really
link,
obvious.
Great accessibility points.
Okay.
So definitely think about doing that. And it depends if you're using a bulletproof button or if you're using a text link. If it's in the middle of a sentence, you can't really have the arrow on the end, can you?
No.
But you can have it as a color and you can underline it. So think about that. And you want it to pop. Like I said, that is the absolute key thing. You want to draw people down through your email, call content. Here is what to do. So with the color, make sure that it's not the same as your background. Make sure you've got a nice high contrast to your background. And I think if you have brand guidelines, if you're lucky enough to have 2 contrasting colors, you're golden.
Yeah.
If you're not, sometimes going completely against your brand guidelines.
I was going to ask this as a few ways we can explore this. Of do you want it to be in tone with your?
It's a hard one. Yeah, I've seen emails where, so if they're brand colours, and I see it particularly with like blues and greens, where everything is blue and green and the call to action is blue and it's all the same and the same tone, that gets lost so quickly and your eye just doesn't see the difference between those elements, I think. So what you can do is you can, I mean, obviously you can look at, orange, green, blue.
Green, red is the typical.
Yeah, things like that. Red, again, it often signifies danger or stop.
Yeah.
So test it, and it depends what your brand colours are. If you've got an element of red, then it could work really well, or the tone of red that you use, for example. But test something. So if you Google, or maybe we'll put a link to a Google page or something of a colour wheel, what you can do is, I can't remember where the colours are because I'm not looking at it right now, but
I think it's red, yellow, green, purple.
Something like that. So if you had red, let's say if your main brand colours are red, say if you're McDonald's, right? Whatever's opposite red on the colour wheel is going to pop the most against that colour. So look at your brand colours.
It's like it's complementary, but not complementary, but it matches. It's not
but
jarring,
it's distinctive enough that there's the difference. So we've got to think about things like that, and you've got to think about things again about accessibility as to text colour on your button colour, and whether or not that's still visible. So run testing on that. But the colour of your buttons can make such an impact. So having a test on that is a really great way to increase that click-through rate. Obviously, there's lots of other elements that you can test, but placement, colour, and copy are the ones that if you want to increase your click-through rate, that's the tactical in-email elements that you can change.
So if you're of the sort, you're listening to this podcast thinking, yeah, all right, I'm going to test garish yellow against my light blue background.
Yep.
And you're trying to convince your boss of this, and they say, right, do a test on a small group. Do you think it's better to test on a group that's already quite engaged because they're quite on board with your brand, generally speaking, or is it a case of, look, this group hasn't opened anything for 6 months, we can say anything we want because we're not at risk of losing reputation? Do you think that makes a difference?
Good question. I think the trouble is, if you're going to try and send it to a group that hasn't engaged in the last 6 months, how much engagement are you going to get? Because you're testing call to action, which means you've got to get them to open it before they're going to do anything with it.
So if you had a group of lots of opens but no clicks, then say that they've, they read it, but you're not hitting the mark with them.
Yes, although what I would just put as a caveat to that is that everything we're talking about call to action is end of the list, final tactical elements.
Right.
Whereas actually, if people are opening but not clicking, you've probably got a problem with content.
Yeah,
And
true.
what you're
It's not
sending
quite.
to them, not necessarily with the design. So it's probably more about taking that group of your audience that is engaging normally,
Take an
for want
average
of a
group.
better
Yeah.
term. Yeah, kind of an average group. And then what we want to do is take our baseline, of course, with testing, and then do we improve or do we drop down and lower our levels? And that's teaching you something, you're learning from it. So yeah, I'm not sure that there is a specifically right answer to that. I would just take a random segment of the audience and run the test, unless, of course, you're testing, does this segment respond better? Because some segments will respond better to some colours than others, or wording, or whatever it is. So that's a deaper testing.
I think once you're into how to segment someone, that's when you've got everyone who needs to be on board with it. I was thinking of this as the first person to try this out. How do you get people to think, oh,
just take a random
it makes
segment.
a difference, or it doesn't make a difference, which it may well not do.
So the other thing, whenever you're doing the testing of any of these elements, is to run it multiple times across multiple pieces of content, across time, because what we want to do is make sure that that change wasn't just that it got a great click-through rate because it was a great piece of content that they really liked.
To be.
Yeah. And this is why when you're testing, and where so many people go wrong, is they don't put a hypothesis on it. So, you know, for this, it would be, we think that a green button will outperform our current blue button because green is different from the rest of our design. There's no other green in the design. We've got, you know, blue, it's going to stand out more. Right. Obviously, you want a much more succinct hypothesis than my ramblings then. You get the gist. Yeah. So you've got to say why you think, what it is that's different. Or we think that, and I can't remember again the colour or what they are, but let's just say there's red and yellow opposite. We think that a yellow button against our red standard branding will stand out more because it's opposite on the colour wheel, and that's going to make it pop. So you've got to have that hypothesis. So colour is really, really important to the psychology side, to the visual side of it popping out, and there's so many tests that you can run around that.
Okay.
In the last one.
Content. This is where it gets.
This is, again, so placement is important. Colour is important. But content, the words that you use. So when I first started in email marketing, it was click here. You know, that time. And don't worry, I still see it. Yeah. I had a report I did for a client the other day when I specifically had to put in the report, try not to use click here. Okay. You know, people generally know, and if you denote it as a link, you know, people are used to it and they know that. So you don't really need the click here anymore. But what you do need is a specific benefit-driven link. Right. You know, let's say if you have a blog post, you know, read more about segmentation now, rather than just read the post. Test things like that and getting specific, because what you want to do is you want to tell people what is going to happen when I press this button. So within your copy, you're setting expectations, you're kind of laying that groundwork, and then when they click that button, you want those expectations to be met and for them to move to that next stage in the journey. But it should all subconsciously be linking together from your copy, from your headlines into your copy to your call to action. You've got to have that connection.
How do you feel about reverse psychology? We tried it in subject lines for a while, and it worked for a little. It was one of those, like you say, that highlighted the point of doing a test for a long time, because it initially worked really well, and then people very visibly got bored of it. Yep. So I wonder what would happen, or maybe if you've seen a client do this, don't click this link, or, you know, don't bother with the webinar. I wonder if that is trying to be too clever, or do people?
I think the issue with that is that it comes across as a little bit kind of like almost clickbaity, you know, like those news articles you find on Facebook.
You won't believe what happened next.
Oh my God, yeah. And then you read it and it's like, and she ate a banana, and you're like, oh, really? You know, like, it comes to something stupid. So I think people are definitely becoming more immune to those kind of things. You know, if we look at banner advertising, for example, you know, 20 years ago, that was massive. You know, everyone wanted their banner ads up, and you had all the different sizes and all, and you still do. but everyone knows now it's brand awareness. The chances of it driving a massive amount of clicks, probably not. So I think the way that people and their understanding develop and move on. So I don't know, it'd be an interesting test on the reverse psychology. I'll leave that one to you, Richard, to test
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, but I think the psychology element of it is really interesting in calls to action, because like I said, it's having that, building the expectation and building the need in your copy, and then meeting that with your call to action, and then where you're driving them to next. That's important, but also how you describe it. So I mentioned about being action and benefit driven in those wording, so things like, if you can be specific, so instead of just saying, let's say if you have a gym membership, instead of just saying, get your membership, it might be
start building muscle,
find your local gym and get your membership, or stuff like that can make even the massivest difference. Or one that I've definitely seen, and take this and test it, is whether or not you're saying get your free download, or get your pair of shoes, or get my pair of shoes.
Oh, okay.
So first person versus third person. That can make a difference. Putting it into the first person, I've seen that have a big impact. So just changing that one word has had a massive impact, whether it's on sign-up forms on websites or whether it's actually in the email. Think about different psychological elements: urgency, authority, fear of missing out, all of those types of things, through to the description words that you're using, through to whether it's first or third party. You've always got to meet those expectations and drive them.
So the other thing of content there was, is there an optimum number of words in the button? Because if it's get your membership, that's what most people think of as a button. So certainly over 3 words, I start getting a bit antsy about. If it's find a gym and start working out, that feels to me like a lot of words for a button. Is there an upper limit?
I'm not sure that there is a specific number, or I certainly don't know what that number would be. I think, again, brands test it. Depends what also fits in your design.
Yeah, okay.
And the placement. So I think it comes down to a number of elements. Like, you don't want War and Peace of 2 sentences, or again, linking all of this in together. What a real bugbear of mine on call to action buttons is when they are full width and they go across the whole width of the email, because I think they look like a header or a banner or a design element. They don't look like a call to action. Okay. So I think that links in well with your how long is too long. I don't know. How wide is too wide is more like it. Yeah, I think so. And it depends, is it left aligned or centered, on placement? That's a big thing as well. Depends what the rest of your copy is doing. So I think you don't want to go crazy. You don't want too many instructions. So you don't want find your gym, get your membership, and start enjoying your new life now. That's
far too long.
Probably too long, and it took a long time to say it as well. But find your gym and get your membership, again, depending on how you design it, it's very specific and benefit driven, and it's finding that balance. There's not a specific number of words that I can give you. I mean, I don't know if you've found anything with yours.
It's not something we've tested. I thought about it as you were talking about the gym membership one there. I thought that sounds long for a button, so I thought we'd bring it up. But typically ours would be sort of download, register, join, or join the webinar, download the white paper, read the blog. So 1 to 3 is probably our sort of standard.
But
that gives us a good baseline to test.
Download the segmentation white paper instead of download the white paper. It potentially links it in with your heading. So if we think about sign-up forms on a website, for example, let's say if you have get 10% off when you sign up to our emails, and you have much better wording than that, of course, But then if you've got a headline like that, then your button should connect in with that. Sign up and get your 10% off. Or sign up and get my
10% off. Yes, we just said, didn't we?
Potentially. Test it. See what works for your audience. Never go with what anyone says, whether experts or not. Always test it for your audience and take it as a baseline. But I don't think there's a specific number of words. And probably, like you said, I mean, 10 words is probably going to be getting too big for a design point of view, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to be under that. You might be around 5 or 6 is your max, maybe, but play with it.
Yeah.
If you've got little words, you've got it and a in there,
Yeah,
then you know.
I mean, it's the same with text link call to actions. If it's a full, I wouldn't link a full sentence, and I
No.
don't know why I wouldn't do that. That's probably the most
Because
important thing.
there's a lot of irrelevant words in a sentence.
Is it a reason?
Right.
Is the reason you're doing something a good reason, or is it because you don't see it done?
Yeah.
And if you don't see it done,
Test
you stand out by not doing what everyone else is doing.
Exactly. There is that as well. So I think with that, when it's in a sentence, you've got to pick out what are those keywords in a sentence. So let's say if the sentence was unlock the secrets of high-performing CTA buttons and boost your click-through rate, I would probably link to unlock the secrets of, I'm just looking at some notes to read that sentence. Unlock the secrets of high-performing CTA buttons. I'd probably link that and not the start boosting your click rates today. You want to pick out with that link, where is it they're going to go? What is it that they're going to learn after it?
So
and take them through. I wouldn't do the whole sentence.
I tend to feel like the words that you highlight or link should be a coherent phrase. Like
yes.
Link to the, isn't a.
Yeah.
Link to the white paper. Fine. So I'd take it longer, or a link to the white paper.
Yeah. When it's in a text link, that's really interesting as well, because you've got to remember whether it's somebody clicking on a laptop or if it's somebody on a mobile device.
Yes.
If you do it as one word, like I've seen some people just do it on, really badly, but it's like a cacophony of all the things don't do, but click on this link.
Oh, yeah.
And then they just put it on link, which is a 4-letter word, and that's hard at the best of times to try and do it. So not only is that wording
using
bad,
a lot of space on your design to click on this link.
Yeah. So not only is the wording bad, but you've also got a link that's like teeny tiny. And again, for accessibility on mobile devices, it's just not going to help. So I think every part of every element of your email, of your forms, of your website, you can dig into and you can really break it down. And I think, just kind of summarize the elements that we've talked about today: placement, copy, and color. Those are your 3 key things that you want to start testing and playing around with if you want to optimize your click-through rates and those buttons.
There we go. Go and start testing. See what let us know what you get up to.
Definitely. And thank you for joining us. Hopefully you found that helpful. And we'll see you next time for another episode of Email and Beyond.
If you like this episode, please follow us on YouTube and subscribe through iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts.